All right, all right, all right. What's up, everybody? It's the talented Mr. Taco here with the Daily Sporting, coming to you with another edition of This Week in Fantasy Basketball. Right now, we're about 5 weeks out from the start of the fantasy basketball playoffs. So now is definitely the best time to make sure that your lineup is optimized and maximized for success. Now, one of the first things that we're going to have to break down is the leading, I would say, player for the rookie of the year is probably going to be out for the rest of the season. LaMelo Ball. He suffered they're calling it a fracture in the hand, in the wrist area. It's a bad injury, as we're seeing right here. More than likely, he's not going to come back for the rest of the season. That's going to be a big blow to some fantasy teams. It's going to be a big blow to his rookie of the year chances. I know that the Charlotte Hornets were trying to make a push to make the playoffs, and it's definitely going to hurt it. But with that being said, with something coming out, something's going to come back in. So now that we have the Charlotte Hornets losing LaMelo Ball, what's going to happen? What does this mean going forward? So if we take a quick look at the stats from 2019 last year, one player that was really efficient with getting people involved was Graham. Okay, now Graham, when we look at what he's doing this year, I'm going to pull up what he's been doing just in the last 30 days on average. Graham right now, his playmaking is significantly down to about 3 assists per game. I'm expecting with LaMelo Ball coming out, his playmaking is going to be elevated. Obviously, they didn't have Hayward there last year, so he's going to be contributing more to playmaking than they had last year, which is going to lower Graham's overall ceiling. But I think Graham is going to be a sneaky nice play that if you held him, that you'll be able to get some good value out of him going forward. And before the trade deadline, if you're looking at getting someone, I think this is a guy that you can reach out for. Currently, he's only averaging 19 minutes per game in the last 30 minutes, and LaMelo Ball was averaging 30 minutes per game. What this means is that we're not going to really see that much of a difference here in Hayward's minutes and Rozier's minutes, but Lonzo's Ball minutes very well could be seeing a lot more of that uptick going to Graham. I think that's going to be a really good player to take a look at. Now, in other news that we also have to come across is LaMarcus Aldridge. Right now, there's 3 teams that are going to be vying to buy out and trade for him. Okay, we're looking at the Spurs, the Blazers. The Blazers, the Heat, and the Celtics are all making a moves for him. If, let's just say, the Celtics make a move, I think that's going to be really hurtful on guys like Theus, and that's going to be hurtful on guys like the Time Lord. So this is something definitely to keep in mind and keep your eyes on. I know that he's starting to be dropped in a couple of leagues. So if he's dropped, you might want to see where he lands. And if he lands in a decent place, he might be a solid add. If he goes into a congested, place like the Celtics, I don't really seeing it being value. I could see where the Blazers would actually be a nice little addition for him and give him some solid value. Another player that could possibly be on the move is going to be Lonzo Ball. Okay, Lonzo Ball is possibly being traded to teams like the Knicks, the Hawks, and the Bulls. Those are the 3 main teams right now that are after his services. And I think that if we're going to be going into this situation, Talon Thornton Anderson is going to be a player that really could get an opportunity to shine and get some solid minutes in and get his value up. Also, depending on what team he goes to, it could impact their value as well. I don't see how the Hawks could really put him on this team and actually help guys like Trae Young. I think if he ends up with the Knicks, it's a good situation where he could really flourish and pay dividends. I think, especially for owners in the fantasy playoffs. So it's going to be a situation that we're going to have to watch as the trade deadline comes up this week. Another player that we have the rumors on is going to be Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon recently just asked to be traded. Right now, there are rumors. It seems like the Portland Trail Blazers are in on a lot of these players. I think that does have to scare you a little bit if you own any big men in that situation. I think if you're expecting Nurkic to come back and be a dominant player and get tons of minutes and be valuable in that aspect, I don't think we're going to see that happening. I think they are going to make a move to get another big man there, and I think it will impact guys like Cantor and him as well. So this is something also that you have to keep in mind as we get closer to the playoffs. Okay. Another thing that we have to look at here is Kevin Porter Jr. recently hurt his quad. Okay. This injury, he tried to come back and play the other day. He played like 20 minutes, wasn't really effective. Since he's been called up from the G League, he's been dynamite, Kevin Porter Jr. So it hopefully this isn't a significant injury that's going to be lingering. But the key note here is that Victor Oladipo, we're expecting, or at least I'm expecting him to be traded by the deadline. And with him being traded, that's going to open up a ton of minutes for Kevin Porter Porter Jr. to be a waiver wire hero and help carry you to a championship. We've been touting Kevin Porter Jr. since he was coming up in the G League, and he's definitely a player where if you got him, it's definitely a good time to hold him, even though he's going through this injury. Okay, Buckscar, Giannis Antetokounmpo. He recently had gone through a left knee sprain. He's missing tonight's game. We don't know what's going to be going with him long term. Hopefully, it's only going to be a game or two. But this is something definitely to keep an eye on as we're going forward and to see how those minutes shake out and who they really play in that situation. Since Jrue Holiday has come back from his injury or from COVID, he hasn't been the best, but he's starting to heat it up. And with Antetokounmpo out, he definitely could start balling and be a solid DFS play for the next couple of games. Okay. One other thing that we have to mention here is LeBron James. He ended, this weekend with a high ankle sprain. Okay. This is going to be an injury that's going to take him out for a significant period of time. This is going to put him out, pushing up into the playoffs. You may get him back for the start of the playoffs or during the playoffs. So this is going to be a loss that a lot of fantasy owners are going to feel coming into this crucial run. Now, when we think about LeBron James, what does he do? He does everything for the Lakers. He scores, he rebounds, he playmakes. So it's going to be a huge void that they're going to have to fill. If we look at the Lakers roster right now and what's going on, minute-wise, Dennis Schroeder is the number one minute guy. He's going to have a lot falling on his plate. And Kyle Kuzma is also going to have to step up big time and become a big-time playmaker. In his last game that we saw Kyle Kuzma play, the Lakers lost, but he tried to do a little bit of everything. He definitely increased his assists, as it was his most assists that we've seen in any game in a long time. He didn't have that many turnovers. He really wasn't efficient, but he's going to be relied upon a lot going forward. So if he's available in your leagues, and it looks like he might take a little bit of a dip in shooting percentage, it feels like he's at 44% currently, but with the increase in his volume, it might drop down to like 43%. If you can withstand this little bit of this low percentage, he may be able to put up solid counting stats going forward and be able to be a nice pickup off the wire or someone that you might be able to trade for on the low. That doesn't really cost you much, that might be able to help you out and get you into the playoffs. Because right now, people got to understand, you're only 5 weeks away from the playoffs. So if you're close, if you're within 10 games, this is your striking range. If you, and the way, I know trade deadlines are coming up soon. I believe that they should be coming up, I want to say within the next week or so. So if you can make a move now, you need to make a move. Sometimes it may be easier just to package two guys, try to get one guy. Maybe you trade one guy and try to get two guys in order to fill up your roster. But you need to see where you're weak at and try to assess the weak points and try to win as much as you can and figure out how many games back you are. Because in most cases, you're not totally out of it if you can go on a run at the end. So you need to make sure that you optimize your lineups, you try to maximize your points, and if you're in the playoff chase and if you have a playoff position, you need to maximize your roster right now. You need to make sure that every position is good as it can be. Sometimes you want to hold and wait on some guys and see what's going to happen. And I think that's the perfect situation to speak about. And this is with Horton Tucker. He's someone that you want to try to grab now and hold and see if he can become the player that he was hyped about during the preseason. And if he could become that player, he's going to be a vital part of your postseason push, especially when a guy like LeBron James, we don't know when he's going to come back. Obviously, when LeBron James comes back, this is going to hurt Tucker's value. But until then, he may be able to carve himself a nice niche, and you don't know what's going to happen until then. So this guy who's only in 33% of leagues is become someone that's almost an automatic ad and someone that you have to put on your roster and on your radar, I should say, just to make sure that, if he's available, that you can get him, or if he's not available, maybe you try to figure out, okay, who's the next guy like this that I could possibly get. Okay. Now, one thing that I do want to touch on, and that's Coby White. Coby White recently lost his starting job to Tato Santoroski. Last season as well, Tato Santoroski was mainly starting. He became a valuable, I want to say, categories type guy because he doesn't really hurt you anywhere. He helps you pretty much everywhere. He's not as good in point leagues, I want to say, Sato, because the problem with him is he doesn't overwhelm you with anything, but he's super efficient. The problem with Kobe White right now is that since he's been getting less minutes and he's been moved to the bench, his percentages haven't increased at all. And now his counting stats have gone down. So the justification of keeping him on your roster right now is becoming harder and harder in category and in points-based leagues. So I think Kobe White is someone that, as we're coming into the stretch, we're really going to have to look at and evaluate and see if we can have him in the playoffs. If the playoffs were to start today, I would be cutting him to add someone. But because the playoffs aren't starting and I have enough time and enough leeway, I'm going to hold on to Kobe White just a little bit longer, see what's going on, see if he can maybe get a chance to win his job back. And if he does, then you know what? I know I have a big-time player, but if not, he's getting to the point where he's going to need to be cut in a lot of leagues. So I think that's definitely something that we need to keep in mind as we're going forward and as we get ready for the playoffs. A couple of quick players that I'd like to touch on that you might want to be able to add. Malik Beasley, excuse me. He is, we want to say, about 2 to 3 games away from coming back. Currently, he's rostered in 70% of leagues, but if we look at what he's been doing on the season, he's been hitting 3.5 threes per game, 20 points per game. It's a situation now where he's going to come back and he's going to be able to just ball out. I think that we're going to have to look at guys like Ricky Rubio starting to go down because his minutes are going to start going down once Beasley and Russell come back. So this is definitely something that you're going to have to keep in mind. But Malik Beasley, if he's free in your league by any chance, which, he is rostered in 70% of leagues, so most leagues he's going to be gone in. But if he's available, he's definitely someone that I would look to pick up and add on your team. Okay. Now, Michael Porter Jr., if we look at what he's been doing over his last 30 days, he's been insane. The dude is finally living up to the top billing that he had when he was coming out of high school and when he was playing in Missouri. This guy is doing everything. He's shooting 58% from the field while shooting 2.5 threes per, or making 2.5 threes per game. He's almost getting a double-double between points and rebounds. He's not averaging many turnovers, but he's also not giving you many assists, steals, and blocks. The main reason why he's doing so well is because he's super efficient. So I think that when you look at a guy like Michael Porter Jr., he definitely deserves some props and some respect from putting up this season. I think it's definitely something that we should highlight and keep in mind as we go forward. Okay, and then I want to end it with a couple of players that you might be able to add as well to your team. Hachimura. If we look over the last couple of games, 62% rostered, okay, but in the last 14 days, he's currently ranked 70, okay? He's been hitting 17 point or hitting 1.4 threes per game and 17 points. He's been getting 54% field goal percentage and 88% free throw percentage, okay? He's only getting 1.4 turnovers and getting you 1.1 steals. So he's giving you a little bit of everything except something in blocks, okay? And if we look at some of the game logs that he's had, which is what really makes him someone that's really interesting to me, 40 minutes, 39 minutes, 38 minutes, 37 minutes, 38 minutes. His minutes have been boosted and they've been up there, and I don't see them them not keeping him at this level of minutes going forward, especially on a team like the Wizards, which doesn't really have much to play for. And this is a young guy that you want to be able to see what you got in him. So I definitely expect that he's going to get a good amount of minutes going forward. Bertans, even when he comes back, I don't know how much he's going to be able to eat into Rui's minutes if Rui keeps playing like this. So he's definitely someone that if you want to add someone, he's definitely someone you can add. Okay. Another guy is Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole is another one of these guys who I can bring up his stat line. If you look at it, 38 minutes, 34 minutes, even in 24 minutes, 21, 22, 20, 20. He's been putting up double-digit points. He's gotten at least 2 threes in every game but one. Okay, he doesn't really turn the ball over. He doesn't give you much steals, but he doesn't really hurt you anywhere. He helps you in a lot of places. Currently, he's only rostered in 42% of leagues. He's up 7% currently. He's definitely someone, if you have an open roster spot, he's a good guy to try to pull in it for that final spot. If you have some injured guys right now, because like I said, we're seeing a lot of guys that are going out with injuries, he's a decent guy that you might want to pick up and add to your lineup as well. Okay, another guy, Danny Green. Over the last 14 days, Danny Green has really gone off. I'm a Knicks fan, so last night I was watching Danny Green play, and Danny Green really wasn't scoring that much until overtime, but what he did do is he had 5 steals and three blocks. This guy was playing like a defensive monster, and by the end of the game, he was hitting his 3. He's been a streaky shooter over these last 2 years, and his shooting percentages have been really awful this year, but if we look at what he's been doing, he's been shooting a lot more efficiently lately. He's been hitting his 3 ball, and he's been giving you those ancillary stats or those side stats, those blocks, those steals that you want to add to your team, because those are the harder ones to get. It's harder to get blocks and steals compared to like rebounds and assists. So he fills up the categories that you need in the harder categories. He's solid in most situations. He's rostered in 35 or only rostered in 35% of leagues. So you're looking at about 65% of leagues where you're able to get a guy like this who's playing significant minutes, who's doing a little bit everywhere. And you could do a lot worse than having a guy like this on your team. And he doesn't really kill you anywhere other than your field goal percentage, where he's hitting about 43%. But depending on how you're playing and who else you have on your team, you should be able to balance this out. And then the last player that I'm going to bring up is a player from one of my favorite teams, the New York Knicks, and that's Alec Burks. Alec Burks, since Derrick Rose has been gone and Alfred Payton, he's really got an opportunity to play a lot of point guard type minutes. Okay, he's been a primary scorer off the bench before that, and he's a guy that Tom Thibodeau really trusts. We've seen him start to close out some of these games. We've seen him come into the overtime and these late game situations, and he's been able to hit the three ball. He's been able to take it to the rim, and he's been able to set up some of his teammates for plays. So he's definitely someone that when we're looking at potential ads, he's definitely someone that I like. Now, Derrick Rose is still ramping up, so he may need a little bit more time. And even when Rose comes back, I think that Burks may have solidified himself as the primary playmaker off the bench, even ahead of Immanuel Quickley, because Immanuel Quickley seems just more involved in getting his shot and getting his points in than creating for his teammates. And with that being said, Quickley's efficiency isn't there right now. So it kind of gives the advantage to a guy like Burks, who's a little bit more efficient than him and can still get his teammates involved. So I think that this is a guy that if you have an opportunity to get him, may be a good grab for you, especially if you look at what he's done in his last 7 days. He's been hitting 2.5 threes, 18 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.3 steals, only 1 turnover, 83% from the free throw. So he's doing a lot for you in a lot of places. He doesn't really hurt you anywhere. Again, other than this guy with low field goal. But overall, it's a solid pickup, especially as we're getting closer to the playoffs and you need to start winning your weeks, and these margins matter because, you're 4 games back and you need to make it up, and you got to start figuring out where you're going to make your 4 games up. So now you have to start seeing, okay, this week, how do I get one extra category? Maybe it's going to be me streaming a couple of players in order to get extra stats in so I could beat this guy. So those are all the things that you have to look at going forward. We're going to keep doing these live during the week. I think I'm going to do these every Monday right around 8:30 so we can answer questions that you guys have about your players, about potential moves that you're going to make, waiver wire ads. We're going to be coming to you with all these different type of low rostered guys that you might want to think about considering adding for your team, depending on your scoring settings and depending on what you're looking at doing and what your team needs. I am the talented Mr. Taco. This is the Daily Sporting. I want to thank you guys for joining us. I appreciate all the love and support that we've been getting everywhere. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. But yeah, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day and peace.
Hey, David and Taco, they bring that heat. All about UFC, way more than a fantasy. Let's see who going toe to toe. Throw down on the mat, check the replay, run it back. We gotta check the stats. Hey, do this every day. We ain't come to play. This is sports talk, and we love talking MMA. Everything fantasy sports. Dopest show that I know. With Electric Dave and talented Mr. Taco. Let's go. Hey, yeah.